Like only like literally 2%, like literally only 2% good people. And you are definitely in my 2%. So if when I have my 2% conference, you will be headlining my 2%
That's
conference
tough.
for sure. But for all of the wonderful growth initiative fellows and 100 Rows from Concrete moderators that we have on the call today, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Industry shit talker. No, I've been in this
That's
space
my
for
line. That's my line.
yeah, true. Look, I mean, long story really short, I've been in this space for like 21 years. I am the not so ad guy, man. Like I've been, the bulk 18 plus years of my career really spent around companies like publishers like New York Times, Viacom. Was part of the executive leadership team that sold MySpace to Justin Timberlake and Specific Media. Really kind of an innovator slash creator that just happened to land in the agency world for the past 2.5 years. So it's at TBWA and more recently the last year now at VML Y&R as executive creative director, running experience design. So kind of a weird position, but like I'm a weird kind of type of creative. So I get stuck in these like, is he innovation guy? Is he a creative? Where do we put him? So I usually straddle both worlds.
Okay. Great. So tonight we wanted to talk about personal branding.
Yeah.
And that's why I reached out to you literally probably over a month ago. And I was like, you know what? I want to have this conversation with the guest about personal branding, but as someone that's really coming into the game, right? And I don't want to tell your age. I'm not going to tell my age, but we're very close in age, right? So having a very strong personal brand is something we actually had to learn, as we were like on this trajectory. Because when we got into this business, like no one was really caring about what you say on Twitter, no one was caring what you say on LinkedIn, all this other stuff. We didn't really know the impact of the words that we use on these platforms,
Yeah.
and that puts us in the space that you and I both occupy today, right?
Yeah.
Because like Lord knows when I first started my LinkedIn profile, I wasn't saying anything. Like I wasn't saying anything,
Facts.
right?
Facts. Yeah.
So what is one of the first elements of creating a personal brand as someone that's new to advertising or communications? Like what's one of those first elements that you want to put out there?
It's interesting. You want to hear some funny shit, man? I
Yeah.
didn't, I didn't, I've never even thought I had a brand until maybe like a year ago, right? And what I didn't realize is I was doing this shit so often and it turned into like a thing. So it's funny because like people ask me a lot of times, well, how do you have a brand and your brand is this and how do you do it? And part of me is like, I don't know, because I think it's what I do is I just lead with authenticity. And authenticity is a word I think that gets thrown out a bunch over the past year at least, since Ahmad and Floyd. But I think it's like it's taking a hold of a moment and engaging in a conversation and being known for a particular topic of discussion, right? So it's hard when you kind of you want to be here and here and here and here. It's almost like you have to pick a lane. So like you look at like a Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Like the guy can do what he does because he actually has 10 people that do his social media and follow him with a camera all day long, right? So, but his brand is this motivational speaker, do good, be better, right? And that's his lane. You rarely see him really step into creative or really step into these other areas. I mean, his lane is making you feel good, right? My lane is just trying to disrupt shit for people of color, right? Specifically Black and brown people and how we show up in these rooms. And I think that part of my brand has been not only just my voice and saying the uncomfortable thing, but it's leading a conversation to inspire all people, white people, brown, whatever, all colors, right, to do a thing. But my way is more of leading the horse to the water, so to speak, right? And trying to motivate people to do more, really.
Mhm. So as you and I, talk about pretty much all the time, the space where these brands kind of live, these professional brands kind of live, when you separate, professional brand of Gary V, the person, then the agency, right?
Yeah.
And amongst that, in that ecosystem, there's a whole lot of hot air, whole lot of hot air, a whole lot of fluff, right? I mean, I commented on one of your posts today. You know, I was talking about Tom Cruise. Made a
Yep.
Tom Cruise analogy because that's where my brain works.
Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks. It was Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks. I did not talk about Tom Cruise.
Yep.
Tom
See,
Hanks.
I was reading.
Yeah, Tom Hanks and coconuts. That's what I was talking about today. But do you find it hard to sometimes like maintain that authenticity that you were talking about earlier? And like, what do you do to like let's say before you post something, do you like think about it and say, all right, this is what I'm gonna say, or do you like do you rewrite it before you actually put it out?
This is a really good question. I have this real problem, man. It's called diarrhea of the mouth, right? So I have sometimes I get like, let me back up. First of all, people often ask this, like, yo, Walt, like, damn, like, yo, you're doing all this shit. How do you keep it up? How do you do your job and do this other shit? This other shit, like this social media shit, is like a fucking afterthought, right? None of this stuff is planned, right? None of it is like, next week I'm gonna do this one thing. Well, some, but I'll get into that. But it's like my post today, like I was upset about some shit I heard from another couple Black executives talking this DEI shit, right? We need numbers. I'm like, motherfucker, you all are executives. How the fuck does this sound that you're talking about you need nigga, hire? You know what I'm saying? Like you can hire us, right? So you know, a lot of the time it's in the moment. It's been funny because like, so at VMLY&R, I have two individuals on the comms team that are my dedicated PR people now, right? So now it is like when I have people that help me now with my brand in terms of like where I need to show up, whether that be speaking engagements and this and that.
The creators, which are in different niches on TikTok.
Yep. And someone's got a conference call. It's all good. We're still here. And the other side too is so like I do sometimes when there's shit where I know I'm gonna light something on fire, like I'll give them a heads up, but that's all they're getting. I'm like, hey, here's a heads up. I'm about to post this. But I want you guys to see it first before I throw it out there, and then I get it out there. But there's sometimes, man, where I will, as of recently, I've been sitting and trying to think before I write because I've done shit that I'm like, oh man, this shit is fucked up. So it's like, so you got to think before you put your shit out there because you got to be smart, and more importantly, now you have to be strategic with some of the shit you say. So if you look at any of the posts that I do or anything that I say, I am not trying to burn people down, but I'm trying, like every single one, I'm very seductive with what I say, right? Because I know that I can get an audience to engage and say the things that I might want to say, but can't say.
Yeah, I think at least 5% of my posts don't make it to anywhere because I'm like, can't say that. Somebody's gonna take it as a double meaning.
Yeah.
And then call me whatever, something jacked up, right? So I would say out of 100% of my posts, I would say 5% don't make it anywhere. And I just say, nope, not today, or maybe another day, but not today, maybe another day. So in, talking about that fluff and that hot air that I was talking about earlier, what faults do you see in personal brands from up and coming people that are trying to like, get into the industry, or maybe they're fresh into the industry, but they're kind of running before they can walk? Like, what kind of mistakes are you seeing?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. I think, you know what it is? I think people want to do this shit because people want to get famous. Let's be honest. There's a lot of people like, yo, I want to be like Gary Vee. I want to get paid. Look, he gets fucking 50 grand to touch a stage for 45 minutes. Like that's real shit, right? And he gets 10, 15 grand to talk on a fucking line on a Zoom like this for like 15 to 20 minutes. Now, the thing is though, I'm like, I think the ones that have been successful at building their personal brands have built those brands around being true and being real. Look at Tesla, right? Like my man this guy's up on fucking things, smoking weed and doing his thing, right? But he's smart. But so I said it's like also individuals who can back up the work. too, right? Because you can't talk the shit and not back up some of the work. I would get fired, okay, with some of the shit that I say if I wasn't doing work here. But I think it's the biggest mistake, I think, is people lead with that, like wanting to be something, right? Like I didn't ask to, like, I didn't want to be like magazines and all that shit. That shit doesn't matter to me, right? Like I'm real when I say, like Kenny, like for anyone here watching, like we have real legit conversations. Like there are a handful of us who are doing this shit because we actually want change. And that's the shit that I give a fuck about, right? But for me, I understand that my voice and being able to do things and my brand, right, is putting shit out there that ignites a bit of a flame, that inspires people, that makes people feel a certain way. Like what we do, what we say, whether it be at work or on social media, I always say, like there's a quote that I love, right? And I use this in pitches all the time. Maya Angelou says, you know, people will never forget people will forget what you've said and people will forget what you've done, but they'll never forget the way you make them feel. Right. So how do you do something that's going to elicit an emotion? Right. Like I've intentionally done shit to make someone feel angry. I intentionally do shit to make people feel joy. I intentionally do things that rile people up. Right. But this is all a part of like your brand and your story and your messaging. We are all walking billboards. Right. And it's like, so we are constantly selling, whether it be when you're in the club or at the bar trying to meet a young lady or a young man, whether you're in your job and you're trying to pitch to your boss or present to your boss an idea that you think is good, whether you're sitting in front of a client and pitching to win the business, we are all selling, right? And when we realize that, it's all about what is the story that you're telling, right? And how are you giving that in a manner that makes someone feel a certain way?
Mm. So I'm gonna ask another question behind that, right? Because earlier you talked about your diarrhea of the mouth, and a lot of people have diarrhea of the mouth. It's kind of contagious sometimes. Do you think there's a thing such as oversharing, and that's when people actually really put their foots in their mouths?
Yeah, man, I think so. But I mean, as long as it's coming from a real place, I mean, like you can't get out here and just get in these speeches and just say whatever, right? It needs to be thoughtful, I think. But I mean, there most certainly is oversharing. I mean, I try my best not to be posting too much, and when I post, I try to post shit that means something, like something that matters, right? Like, you know, Gary's cool and all, but like motherfucker posts like fucking 10, 12 goddamn posts a day. And the more I see in his face, I'm like, bro, I'm tired of seeing your face. Right. This is a lot. This is an overload. You know what I'm saying? So I think so it's like, you know, here, I'll give you real talk. This is what I do. I move a lot in the moment. Like my post today on LinkedIn was very much in the moment, right? But then what I'll typically do is if something sparks a flame, and I feel like this is a discussion that more people need to hear about or talk about. Like real fact is I run over and I'll poke someone at a Adweek, or I'll poke someone at Ad Age, or I'll poke someone at Fast Co. Hey, you should check this out real quick. Not about me, but check what other people are actually saying on this post. And then they turn that into a story. And then what I tend to typically do is, because I think part of your brand, part of building your personal brand is part of being relevant, which means like you got to be seen, right? So like it is timing things to make sure that things are jumping every once in a while, right? So like I did a post, whatever, with my daughter. So my daughter, anytime I receive an award, my daughter accepts my award. She's 6 years old. So she loves doing it. We record a thing, I post a video, boom. I did that like last week, Friday or something like that, right? And then I had a thing, I did an interview on NBC, and they were trying to post it earlier this week. And I was like, yo, just wait till next week. Wait till like Sunday. So they'll post on that Sunday. And then I got a thing, an interview I did with Johnson & Johnson. They were trying to do it a couple of weeks ago. I was like, no. Just give me like 2 or 3 more weeks on that. So I try to spread things out, you know, because you don't want everything to boom, just drop all at once. So when you have initiatives, you have things, whether it be your work, your campaigns, a message you want to give, something, like pace yourself, right? And spread the work out, because people get anxious, like, yo, get this press, do it tomorrow, then the next day, and then you're fucking gassed out 6 days later.
Yep. It's all about creating that cadence, right? Yes. I think it's all about creating that cadence, creating that rhythm, creating that flow of how, if you have a lot of shit that you want to say, it's all about creating a cadence, because then that also kind of sets up your audience to kind of know like, oh, I know I'm gonna check for Walter at 10 a.m. on Tuesday because he's gonna say something.
Yeah.
I think that's super important.
Yeah, indeed. And it's like, I mean, I tell people all the time, like, don't overthink shit. You know what I mean? Like, people put too much thought into this shit. Like, it's not that serious. You know?
And to grab the end part of your answer in saying it's not that serious, how do you separate? So also, because like you post about your daughter, I post about my daughter a little bit. But you post about your daughter a lot, which I love because I got a daughter too. Shit, girl, dad, all day. But how do you separate your personal brand from your professional brand, or are they just one and the same?
They're absolutely one and the same. At least there's for me, right? So like, I talk shit and do whatever, but I include my family, my daughter, and things because I think people want to know the real you, right? Like, I don't want to see the fake shit. Like, so real talk. Like, Gary is cool as shit. He is a different person from the person that we see on social media. Not that dude in person. Super chill, super late. Not this, not that shit, right? So that camera goes on and he flips a switch, right? I'm different. So like my thing is like, I just try to be real, right? I try to be me. I try to show the real side of me and what I have going on. I think it's one whole thing. And I think that's why people trust in what I say, right? And engage in the conversations, because I think that people feel as though they know you, right? Like, I meet people and I mentor quite a lot of people. When I meet, like, a lot of times people are like, yeah, I feel like I know you, right? And that's okay, right? It's also like, also part of my brand is, my personal brand is, like, I want people to know that, like, I'm here to help. I'm here to communicate. There's too many people that, and we had this conversation a lot, right? There's a lot of black and brown, you know, executives who, if I reached out right now, I was like, yo, can I get 15 minutes? I wouldn't, crickets. And that's unfair, I think, right? Because I think there's a lot of times we feel like it's nice to be able to reach out to someone that looks like us and be like, hey, can I just ask you a question? Hey, can I speak to you for 15 minutes? Or, hey, this is what I'm doing. Can you give me some feedback? I talk to every single person that reaches out to me, every DM on Instagram, every message on LinkedIn, every message on Twitter. And I think that's important, but that's part of my personal brand, is being someone who was there, right? Someone who was responsive and someone who actually gives a shit.
Yeah, Tom Hanks ain't answering your notes, son. I'm just letting you know.
These are facts, man.
Tom Hanks is not answering your notes. Hell, Tom Hanks don't answer my notes either.
I mean, look, I can go through a list of names, but I'm not gonna do that tonight.
Yeah, we ain't gonna do it.
Might be somebody's boss. No, I'm fucking around, I'm playing.
Or somebody's future boss, or somebody's future boss, right? Future boss. Because all the gifts are future bosses for sure. Are there any personal brands out there that you actually like admire of people? And if so, why?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know that I know of a particular person. I think that there's people who have bits and pieces that I admire, right? And what they do. There's like an Antonio Lucio, who's my mentor, and he is, you know, ex CMO of Facebook recently. I guess he says he didn't retire, but whatever, he's chilling. And he was also ex CMO of HP. And I just think the way he moves is real powerful, man. Like his whole approach to business, his whole approach to people and tackling issues, but his way of doing things is different from mine, which is different from other people. His approach is more of like, hey, like we could use your voice on behind the scenes. We don't have to do this loud shit. And I'm like, well, I think the loud shit works, right? Loud shit is of our time, because when you talk and you in numbers, right? Like, it's harder to dismiss someone. There's other people as well that I admire. Like, there's a dude named Jason Witt who was a boss of mine. So it's a white dude, and he taught me so much about the importance of being yourself, right? And I learned that from watching him. Like, this is a white dude who, actually, this is probably the reason why I curse so much, right? Is because I was real proper shit. And then when we met at Viacom, this dude would go on client meetings and pitch this and F that and what that. And I'm like, this white dude is crazy. I'm like, these motherfuckers hearing the same shit I'm hearing. But what I got from that is, I was like, I mean, if he can do this, I can do this, right? And he really taught me the importance of showing up being you. Like, the dude would have like button downs not tucked in, some Converse on, some jeans, and it was crazy to me to see something like that. So part of his brand though is this guy that's like smart and just doesn't give a fuck and just says whatever's on his mind, right? But one of these dudes that could literally, like when they say like sell ice to an Eskimo, this is that dude. So I think that there's, for each of us, there is that somebody, right? And if you were to look at 4 people who brought me up through this space over my 20 years, if you saw these people, you could see bits and pieces of what I do in them, because I saw different things I like from different people that I essentially like emulated, right? And I think that's important, right? We learn from watching other people make moves and the way they do things.
Okay, so I'm gonna push you on this answer just a little bit because you know you're my fucking brother, so I can do it.
So good.
But how? But I'm putting myself like Kenny like 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you find that sweet spot to be your authentic self without feeling like you're going to jeopardize? Like, so if you're a junior cat, right, like you don't know how to find that sweet spot without unfortunately having to shrink yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you find that sweet spot and then kind of bloom from there?
Yeah, so I can say that, look, when you 20 years ago, when you and I were on the come up, it's way different than now.
Way
right?
different.
Like I can say right now, every person on this call has the ability to use their voice and say, we'll say uncomfortable shit, right? We have the ability to ask for the things that we want, whether that be your salary, whether that be your promotion, whether that be things that upset you or things about a campaign. Like, we have that ability now. When you and I 20 years ago, we did not have that shit. That type of conversation came up, it was like, you're out of here, buddy, right? So I think we are in this moment that, while it is a fucked up moment, it is an empowering moment for us, right? It is a time where we can be heard. It is a time when people are listening. And I tell people all the time, use that to your advantage, right? I am using this moment to my advantage as well by going out and just kind of going off on shit, right? And I think that's important, right? And I know I want to also like state the fact that I know it's not easy for everybody to do the same thing. And we don't all have to tackle problems and do things the same way, right? Like, I do things different, way different from Kenny, way different from Peter, way different from Derek Walker, right? But we're all trying to make progress and we're all trying to push the ball the same direction, right? So I tell people all the time that, like, you know, now is the moment to, like, if you want to come out and have your brand and do this and that, like, now is a moment where we're using your voice is an incredible time. But I also say, with the access to the tools that we have now in Clubhouse and Twitter and like Instagram and all this shit, like, we're able to make connections and conversations with people that we just couldn't do 20 years ago, right? So it's so much easier now.
Yeah, I feel like the technology has definitely given us access to stand on a little bit of a taller mountain than we were before, especially before COVID, right? Because, like, you know, everybody's locked home. Shit, we can just hop on this shit and talk all the shit that we want. You know, it's fucking awesome. So, shameless plug, you know, if you're not following Walter on Clubhouse, because he's like the king of Clubhouse, you need to follow Walter right now on Clubhouse. But that's just a shameless plug. But as I continue, one thing that I think that makes us just close friends is that you use your brand to really uplift the culture. Could you kind of explain that to them and how you use your brand to uplift the culture?
Yeah, I mean, this is really dovetails off what I was just saying just now, right? Because of this moment, I kind of use the platform. Let me actually even back up a little further. I've always, the past probably, I've kind of come to this realization of the importance of what I do and how I do it about 4 years ago, 3.5, 4 years ago. And it was this moment where I took this company, I turned it around. My boss, my CEO, who brought me in there from Viacom, she brought me in here. She basically had some drama. She ended up leaving. I started becoming, like, using my voice like I am now. New CEO basically got mad and was like, I don't like the fact that this black kid's becoming the face of my company. And a week later, we had layoffs and he put me number 1 on the list, right? I grew that business from around like $500,000 to in 1 year. Well, no, excuse me, $500,000 in 1 year to, by the time I left, which is 2.5 years later, was 112 million in revenue, right? And so upon leaving, I had this moment of like, oh fuck, like what am I gonna do? Right? Like I was scrambling to try to find a job and everything. My wife came and she said to me, as I'll never forget, I was in my office kind of doing some work and applying for jobs, and she was like, it's okay to be home. And it made me stop for a second, like, wow, what the fuck? Because it made me realize that we so often get caught up in this shit, like our jobs matter so much, right? And it's not the case, but in the advertising space, success to us is measured by the awards you have. It's measured by your job title. It's measured by the money you make. It's measured by where you work. It's measured by the press that you get, right? Your social media fucking followers. And it's all a fucking facade because it's not the shit that really matters. So I decided the time to take a year off, and we were on vacation. I was sitting poolside, and it was like 2 weeks after that moment. I'm sitting here scrolling through, I don't know what might have been Instagram or somewhere, and I saw someone posted a meme, and the meme said, what the fuck did it say? It said, if you were to die today, your job would be posted before your obituary, right? And that shit was like, wow. And I was like, what the fuck am I stressing this shit for? And I said, well, how can I? That was a moment where I was literally like, this happened like 3 minutes in my head. I was like, what the fuck? Like, I should be doing more. How come I'm not doing more? At the time, I was a vice president creative director. I didn't know any of them. And I'm any other Black creative directors or VPs. And so I was like, well, fuck, I wish I had a mentor. Well, how come I'm not mentoring other people? How come I'm not reaching back and doing more for other people the way I wish someone would do for me? And it was that moment where I was like, I gotta do something. So I started going out, speaking at colleges and speaking at high schools and doing all this shit, before I was employed, when I had my year off. And then as I got hired, I continued to do the same thing. But like my last 2 jobs, like the first day on the job, I've said, this is what I do every time. When that offer comes through and I'm about to sign, I say, hey, look, I need you to check my social media, all that stuff, take a week. I want everybody to see you on down. And I need you to understand the way how I move, right? Because if you guys can't rock with that, or if that's an issue, I shouldn't come here, right? And I do that because I think it's important that I ensure that I can continue using my voice and no one's going to prevent me from saying things that I need to say. So through these years, though, it got me to this point of saying, well, fuck, like I need to do more and I need to figure out ways to help more people. Right. So my whole theory is how do I extend the table? How do I build a longer table? How do I send the elevator back down for somebody else so that their opportunity is not as difficult as mine was? And let me be clear, I've been fortunate in a lot of ways, right? But that does not mean I didn't have hardships and fucking hard times to get to where I'm at. I had times where I walked as executive into my office on the first day of the job to sit in the previous CCO's seat who had been gone for the past X amount of time. And in the window where my new office is, there's a couple dolls and some tchotchkes and shit, and in the middle of it, a blackface doll, right? So these are the type of rooms that we are coming to work in, right? And when you start to understand the significance of who is at the top and who is preventing opportunities for people like us, then you understand the importance of those individuals who happen to look like us, who are at the top, and the importance of them reaching back down to pull others up. So when you look at this advertising space and you see 2 Black chief creative officers in a holding agency, 9 Black ECDs in a holding agency, 6 Black GCDs in a holding agency, fucking gigantic gap, and then we got like ACDs or CDs, that's a problem, right? So we need to figure out, how do we bring those people up to the middle? How do we bring those people from the middle back up to the top? And this is what we do, man. So like my voice, my personal brand didn't really jump off until 2 years, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, maybe something like that, 2.5 years ago. And it's funny, the way it popped off was through a LinkedIn post, and it was around ageism.
Yeah, I
right?
remember. I
right.
remember.
Yeah, and so that I was talking shit, and then this ageism post, I was kind of frustrated because there's all these people like, oh, I'm 40 under 40, I'm 30 under 30. And I was like, man, there's a lot of talent over 40. This is bullshit. We need to,
Exactly.
So what's interesting about that, though, and why I bring it up, that took off because it affected white people too.
Yes,
That's
sir.
why that post took off. That post has something like 2.5 million, interactions. Forbes wrote a fucking article around it. Adweek, Ad Age, everybody started writing these articles about it. And that was like the spark for me. That was like, boom, and everything just kind of took off, and people started engaging with a lot of my content. But it was also that moment where I was like, well, shit, like I need to use that platform and talk about my problems or our problems.
Yeah.
And so I pivoted over.
Yep. I
I
remember
rambled a
the
lot there. I'm
article.
sorry, man.
Nah. It's good. It's good. It's good. I remember that article like yesterday because as soon as you put it out, I was like, yo, this shit right here. And I'll leave it at that. So I don't get I don't get long-winded about how I felt about that article because like, you know, the 30 under 30, the 40 under 40 bullshit. Like, it's like some of y'all, you know, still don't know your ass from a crack in the wall, like for real. And somehow or another, you're on some list, you know,
Look,
like it's absolutely insane.
so you want to hear the biggest secret? Look, I will commend if any of you get it, cool. Put that shit on your resume. It does help, right? But I will say that it's funny being in the agency world now in 2.5 years and being at the executive leadership level, like to see how all of this shit works.
Mhm.
Like real talk is people get handpicked to win those awards. The 30 under 30s and 40 under 40s, it's like they have people who, okay, let's just go over here. Let's write this up and we're going to submit it. We're going to like they have, so like VMLY&R, we have legit awards teams, like people who build the case studies, write the case studies, do all this shit, submit their job is to submit people for awards. It's like if you're at a smaller agency or a company that doesn't have that, like you're not going to win those awards, right? Which is unfortunate. And then back even, I know I'm rambling, but back even to like the importance of awards and shit like that. Like I wrote an article about a week ago. It's like, I'll tell all of you here, like go to places and I like real talk, go to a place where you have the ability to work on shit that's going to get you awards. And I say that because if you look at any chief creative officer, every single one of them has multiple awards. You are not going to get into that position unless you have a shit ton of Lions, Clios, and NY festivals, all that. So it's important, right? Yep. So it's important that you try to go to places where you could get on some of that work, so you could boast and put some of that stuff on your resume. Because you know, real talk, it's like it's that as much as it's annoying and whatnot, like that shit matters as you start going up the ladder.
Mm-hmm. So right about now, I want to just open it up for any gifts that have any questions before we let Walter go, because yes, we're recording this, but if you weren't paying attention, he dropped a hella tons of bombs on y'all this evening. So I want to really open it up for y'all if y'all have any questions before we let Walter go, because y'all still have a long night ahead of y'all with growth skills lectures and team creative stuff that y'all got to do. So anyone have any questions for Walter?
Y'all could ask me anything other than my social security number.
Yeah.
Like anything goes. Don't be shy. Alex, man, you always got some shit to say. What up, Alex?
Oh, you know, Alex always got something to say. Or Devon, one or the other. Oh, Jackie. All right.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you. Yeah, you're a little breaking up, but I can hear you okay.
Okay, sorry. I'm on vacation. I'm at the coast and the service is horrible. But my question is, how do you
start the question over, Jackie?
My question is sorry. My question is, how do you, because like my challenge anyway in my professional work life is that sometimes I can come off a little abrasive because I'm so like high energy and like basically high energy, and I do have a lot of opinions on things. How can I translate that into a more palatable, authentic version of myself? Or do you have any suggestions on how to make that more easier to accept?
So the problem in that question is the last thing you said. How can I make it more easier to accept? Right? You shouldn't be wanting someone to accept you as being something. Like you shouldn't have to be somebody else. So this goes back to like code switching, right? So I say this all the time. There is a reason why you feel that way. I feel that way. We feel that way because many years ago when we were growing up, right, like our parents would say shit like, "Don't say anything out here is gonna embarrass me," or "Don't let it," like we're constant, right? Like constantly told not to a certain way, act a certain way, or talk a certain way, or be a certain way around non-PLCs. And then when we enter these boardrooms, we feel uncomfortable because it's like, oh, maybe I'm doing too much or providing too much energy, or maybe they feel uncomfortable because of the way, like, I mean, we're kind of in a moment where it's like, fuck all that stuff, right? So I would say to you that use that energy, right? Because real talk is, as a creative, what's the most important is your ability to have that energy, your ability to tell a story, your ability to craft a story, your ability, like I said earlier, to make people feel a certain way. If you look at any creative, so like as an ECD, I might touch Photoshop like 15 minutes a week, if that. A chief creative officer probably hasn't touched this shit in years, right? So the further up the pole you get, the less work you're doing, the more storytelling you're doing. So if you look at chief creative officers, one thing you'll find in common in ECDs is they're really fucking good at talking, right? They have a lot of energy. They're the ones who's in the room who could show up and get everybody to feel like fucking good, right? So if you have like that, that is a hard thing to learn, right? So if you have that already, I say that's a good fucking thing. And if you feel you're in a room where people don't acknowledge that, or people feel uncomfortable, then, and I hate to say this, but maybe you're in the wrong place. I would also say that it's okay to have those conversations, right, with your boss or someone else to say, hey, you know what, like, I'm feeling like, and I always say, like, if anyone ever gets counseling, right, or therapy, like, that's totally fucking fine, right? But when you do get that, if you haven't yet, one thing you'll learn is the power of using the word feel, right? So you don't say shit like, you know what, like, I was kind of pissed off the way you responded to me, because I thought that you thought that I was whatever, as opposed to, I feel hurt the way. So it's all you often want to start with the I feel, right? And then you tell, because people can't rebut the way you feel, right? Because that's the way you feel. So I say sometimes it's okay to have these open and candid conversations with the folks. I've been in situations where I felt like my boss is a fucking asshole the way he responds to other people and me. So I pulled him aside and I was like, look, I got to tell you how I feel right now, right? And we had a full-on conversation. In real talk, he was like, wow, I did not know that I was actually doing that. I need to check myself, and I apologize for that. So don't be afraid. We have this kind of, there's this feeling of like fear of telling someone how we feel, right? Or fear of, like, we'd much rather say, well, fuck this place, I'm gonna go find a new job. No, because if the same problem happens there, you're gonna jump out of that job and go someplace else, right? Use your voice. If you feel that uncomfortable, the way people are approaching you in meetings, maybe you bring it up to your boss, or bring it up to someone, and that's okay.
Yep. I 100% agree. I mean, as I heard once, and I can't even quote whoever said it, but they said, the days of us like making ourselves palatable for other people are over. You either love me or leave me alone, straight up. And that's Brand Nubian, by the way. Is it Brand Nubian? Love me or leave me alone. But either way, it's a lyric from a song. So
you got it right.
Brand Nubian, right? Yeah.
Yep. And thank you, Jackie, for the question.
Yes, Jackie, you rock. Brittany, you up next. You got your question ready? And Kylie, you're after Brittany.
I do, actually. I kind of feel like you answered it a little bit, but I'm still gonna ask it. Maybe if you do have a different response, or if it sparks anything. But yes, I guess it's kind of very similar. It's like, how do you like deal with people, like especially from your own community, who hold very high expectations for you, especially when you come in with, like, certain energy and you're going to get stuff done, and you are, but it's just that sometimes things happens, life happens, and that process is a bit more slowed down. But it's like, because like these people like have the high expectations, and because they only see like the outcome of what you produce, they get into this mindset where like they feel like to rush your process with doing certain things, and just in that time period it may be too soon, and then they end up trying to like undervalue you and all the contributions that you already made. Like, how do you deal with that? Because that kind of happened to me today, and I ain't go off on the lady, but I think she got it coming. She on my list, but yeah.
So there was a lot of questions in here. So starting from the top let's run this out. I think your question really revolves around the fact that you're clearly producing a ton of work, good work. You're doing it fast because you've done this work fast. Expectations are high of you. right? And the demand is high, but you've probably been pressed to a point where you're feeling like you're being overworked, right? Okay, yeah, so again, this goes back to the power of a simple fucking conversation, right? So I think it's in there. Are you at an agency? Can I just ask? You don't have to say which one if you are.
It's another internship program. It's like a consultrepreneurship. Like it's a really like a learning opportunity, stuff like that. So like it's aware that, you know, we're all students and like similar to this, like learning the process. And, you know, we actually have a client and, you know, it wasn't the client who had the attitude. It was like one of the advisors, like who like check over the work. And it's just like, you know, yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I think it's, and I asked if you were an agency or whatnot, because I think sometimes at agencies there's this crazy fucking expectation that you should be like workhorses, right? And it's like you gotta fucking work, get this shit done. So it can be a difficult, stressful thing. But I think I know this is probably not the answer you want to hear, but like I've always, as a creative, the one thing I've always loved about doing design work, and I used to do, you know, front end development as well, is no one can tell you how long this shit really takes to do, right? So some shit that might take you an hour, I might stretch that bitch out to like 4 hours, right? And so I say that like, and this is a fucked up thing I'm saying, so I apologize, but like, I am probably one of the laziest people you've ever met, right? Like if I have 2 weeks to do some shit, I'm gonna do it the night before, right? But that's just how I work, and that's how like I tend to kind of get motivated when I'm under pressure, right? But there's also times where I ensure that like if I'm doing work or work is given to me, like I personally try to not deliver over the top every fucking time, because what you're doing is you're setting that expectation. So if you've already set the expectation that, yo, you can knock some shit out in an hour that takes Johnny and fucking Paul 6 hours to do, they're gonna expect you to do it every fucking time. So I know this might not be the best answer, but I would say sometimes it's okay to stretch your shit out a little bit, right? But I'd also go back and say that, like, look, if you like, again, like a conversation's like, hey, you're talking to your supervisor or saying, hey, look, like, I've been under crazy amounts of pressure to deliver over the past X amount of weeks. And I've been doing like way faster than I normally do. But because of that, I'm not being able to put a thorough thought process into this. Because real talk is the more you rush, like the less quality the work. So I think the question that posed back is a simple one that, well, do you want the quality of the work to drop? Or are we trying to really sell through some shit that's going to be really good? Because I can be more effective if I have more time to do some of this. I hope that helps some. If you have more questions, you have real issues with that, you can hit me up. We can talk.
Yep.
Thank you.
They all have a link to you on LinkedIn, Walter. So they'll all be emailing you. So great question, Brittany. Next up on deck, we got my girl Kylie from Temple University, Philadelphia's finest. What you got for us, Kylie?
I'm actually in Chicago now, so Chi-Town finest.
Oh, you in the shine now. Stop showing off.
But earlier you talked about being relevant and being seen and being on time with the trends that are going on. But I have a question about staying true to your authentic self when you're growing in a fast-paced environment that is overcrowded with social media facades. And also, how do you utilize these platforms to help you grow if it's overwhelming at times?
Yeah, so that's a really good one. I mean, I'd say it depends on your definition of what growth is, right? If growth to you is followers, right, that's one thing. But like, here's a great example. Clubhouse is super whack to me right now. I will, however, say there was a time where it was incredible, and it was incredible because there was like 2,000 people on it, like last August, something like that, September. And when you were getting on it, like I could be in a room with 4 people and MC Hammer and Gail, right? And I use that as an opportunity to establish relationships with people. So growth for me was ensuring that I could reach and touch the right people, establish those relationships so that when I need them, I can go back to them for help. So like So like the amount of people I met on Clubhouse is like Lamar Odom. We talk like every fucking day, but I met Lamar through Clubhouse. Like I could go through a list of people who I met through Clubhouse through just like simple conversation. So you need to ask yourself, like, what is your intent, right? Is it to help other people? Is it to grow your, like, make more? And this is okay to say this. Is it to make more money for yourself? Is it to grow in the job that you do? So I think once you're able to answer that question, then it's a matter of where you target that conversation, where you put yourself, right? It could be a simple, like, I think the most for me, the most powerful social media platform is LinkedIn. Reason why is because the types of conversations I'm having, I know that executives are listening. So an example, I did a post like 2 months ago about the fact that, like, when we talk about DEI, we never talk about disabilities, right? And that's real talk. So there's a huge segment of people that are totally fucking left out. And the post went viral. A week later, my boy, who's an executive C-suite over at Omnicom, hits me up and he's like, yo, it was a Friday. He was like, yo, earlier today, we had a C-suite call, whatever. And what was crazy is that 2 people brought up the post you did a week ago about disabilities. And now we spent the entire 2.5 hours conversation talking about that post and talking about how we need to do more around people for disabilities. And now we're now retackling this whole conversation across Omnicom, right? A fucking post that took me 3, 4, 5 minutes to write. Right. So it is what is your intent and what are you trying to do? And once you understand that, backing into where you want to actually have those conversations. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you so much.
But thank you.
Question, Kylie. And it's also just to kind of even sprinkle a little bit of Kenniness on that answer. The intent has to be clear. If that intent is not clear, it's going to get lost in translation. So it's very important to make sure whatever that intent is, that it's as clear as hell. So thank you so much, Kylie, for your question. We're going to bring up my girl, Jen, for the last question of the night. So Jen, holla at us. What's good?
Wait, what's happening? Hello?
Yeah,
There you
go. It was really low, Jen.
Oh, I'm low?
No, you're good.
You're good now.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for this. This is amazing. My question is more so about like handling microaggressions as you like move up the ladder, and like just how do you navigate those spaces? And because I really want to be anchored in this information, because you know I have family members that are older than me that are going through that, and it's like, if I can just give you an example, like, because of what happened last year, you know, the racial reckoning and everything, and some companies have been very performative where they're like hiring, like, for example, let's just say a law firm, for example, they're hiring like a lot of Black attorneys. And it would, for someone coming into that company, they're like, oh my God, they're doing so much things. They're like making, you know, building diversity and stuff like that. But then the other attorneys that are not of color, they're not being nice. They're saying things like, I don't really understand this whole diversity thing. I don't see the point of it. And, you know, they're not treating you nicely and stuff like that. Like, how do you navigate that? How do you even approach the leader of the company, which would be the owner? How do you approach leadership about those issues? That's really my question. Sorry for rambling.
No, not at all. Not at all. Look, this is a really good question. I know Kenny will have a better answer than me, so I'd love Kenny answer as well. But here's my thought. I have dealt with and mentored people that have dealt with microaggressions. I have dealt with them over my career as well. And I hate to say this, right? But like, people will do that type of shit intentionally, a lot of times intentionally, because they feel that they can get away with it, right? And there's this level of confidence in when they feel that they can do it. And I would say that it's okay to have that same confidence in your response. Now, I'm not saying you need to go back and be like, nigga, let me tell you. No, I'm not saying that, right? But what I'm saying is there is a way you approach some of these conversations where you could very easily say, if we could just back up for a minute, because I think that what you just said was you know, with ill intent, and whether it wasn't with ill intent or not, I feel very disrespected by what you had said. And I think that is, look, they know, a lot of people know that when they say something, some people are assholes. They're gonna say things that make you feel uncomfortable, right? But it's okay if you like this. This is the same shit I teach my 6-year-old daughter, right? If someone says something to you, I feel we are in a moment now where it's okay to say that shit back, right? And I also say too that like I put a lot of these motherfuckers on blast, right? Like I've heard other shit like people do, the white execs and this to this person, that person, and me personally, I've made it my whole thing to fucking go and talk to management and call these people out and put them on the watch. And I think that that's okay too. But it's I'd also say too that like it's like there are a lot of us on this call right now, and it's so important that we have each other for support, right? Because there's it's like a lot of times when you get into these type of situations and you feel a certain way, and like you need to have someone to talk to. Like there's many times I go to Kenny like, yo, this shit just happened. What the fuck do you think? Because let me tell you how I feel, right? And Kenny might set me straight, like, no, that wasn't like that. So like it's important that we have a support system and talk to one another and communicate with one another and help one another. And another thing why that's important too, is like all these motherfuckers on this live right here, like guess what? Like none of you are gonna stay in the same job for 15, 20 fucking years, right? Like Jen, like you're gonna probably, like Juan might go and fucking get this other big job over here. And Juan might turn around like, yo, Jen, check this out. Like I got this role over here, you should come through. You might come through and be like, yo, Brittany, check this shit out. I got another role over here. Like when we move up together. Like I can look across a ton of senior vice presidents, a ton of executive vice presidents, a ton of chief executives that I worked with 20 years ago. We were all bottom feeders, like doing nothing, right? So it's important that you establish your relationships, you lean on each other and help each other and create opportunities for each other as well. But Kenny, I mean, you probably have a better answer than that, because I feel like you've probably dealt with this a lot more than me in terms of managing the shit as you're
Well, when I opened the can of act right to these agencies, there's certain things that you have to do. And I saw that our lovely gift Takia said, put them on blast. Put them on blast it's great in a hypothetical sense, but putting them on blast can also have a negative effect on you, right? Because basically you're like basically putting them on blast, but then you're not thinking about whatever ramifications may come back to you if they retaliate, right? Because then what is it going to be, just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So it's very important to really think about the space that you're in and how you're existing in that space. Now, do microaggressions suck? Answer to that question, hell yes, right? But it's all about really thinking about how do you communicate with that person? How do you take the first step not to put them on blast, but bring them into like a private space, whether it's a call, whether it's a Zoom call, whether if you're in the office, like just a private space, and actually tell them about the effects of that negative behavior that it had on you. And let's say it didn't even happen to you personally. Maybe it happened to your coworker that is just someone that's voiceless and doesn't feel like they have the guts enough to kind of speak up for themselves. But starting it on a privately basis is the first step. You can't just automatically like throw their name out there on Twitter or on LinkedIn and be like, yeah, my boss so-and-so and so-and-so is a straight up asshole. Like that's just gonna get you fired. Like to be totally honest with you. Yeah. So it's very important to state the inappropriate behavior effectively, but then also have a clear path to tell the offender on how that, whether it was something they did, hopefully they didn't touch you, but even if it was to the point where they touched you, like how did that behavior make you feel and why did it make you feel that way? If it made you feel unsafe, say it made you feel unsafe. If it made you feel like you were less smarter than you actually are, say that, but be very articulate about it, because let me tell you something, most likely this person has done it before and they haven't gotten checked. So if you have this one opportunity to check them right, because if you check them wrong, they're gonna do it again. So it's very important to take that opportunity to check them the right way. And then also give them the opportunity to really give them options on how not to say things that are offensive, or God forbid, like they touch you, like, hey, you know what? Next time when you're trying to make a point, don't fucking touch me. Like, make sure that you are very, very clear on what the options are so that behavior is not repeated again. And at the end, Then you kind of talk about the positive results, right? Like, what are the positive results for this person not acting this way ever again, and kind of thinking before they talk, right? That's so very important. So by kind of following those steps, and this is all recorded anyway, so you guys can watch this a million times, but these are really like the great steps that you can actually take before you have to kind of go all nuclear on them. Because look, nuclear should be the last option. And I'm all for it, but it has to be the last option, because let's say, you don't go nuclear and this actually works. Then you don't have to run into this problem ever again. But if you pull them to the side and follow these steps, and they actually do follow through with it, then actually that's where the change starts. And you're not only saving yourself if it happened to you, but you're also saving the other people that are in that ecosystem with you. So that's how you kind of deal with it.
And look, real talk is.
Next time I gotta charge you for this question, but
real talk is like, that shit is not easy. It's super uncomfortable, but I guarantee you, they will be way more uncomfortable than you delivering it, right? Like, to my point, like I've had this similar type of conversation where I pull someone to the side, and this individual was like, "Wow, I had no idea," right? So, I think it's important to raise it. Like again, I go back to the fact that like times are different right now, today. Right, we can say shit that we want to say, right? And quite frankly, it's okay.
Yep,
Thank you.
100%. So I know I said last question, but I'm gonna give Brianna the last question because I saw I see her hand up. So Brianna, pull up what's on your mind.
Oh, me? Oh, okay. So like, how do one find the courage to like speak up or find like our voice? Because like, I'm not gonna lie to you, sometimes I'd be like guessing myself. So I'm like, should I do it, should I not do it? I'm like, and then I miss it, and then I was like, okay, I'm just keeping myself quiet, so it's like sometimes it's like a struggle for me. So I'm like, I mean, I'm still working on it, but yeah, I'm just saying, like, what's your advice, or like what do you like tell yourself when you're like, I don't know, but
yeah. Nah,
I'm just like
nah, it's okay. Look, real talk is like this. Like, real talk is like so many, and I alluded to this earlier, so many of us are making change in completely different ways. Like, how I move is different from how Kenny moves, is how different from Derek Walker moves. Like, there's this brother named Peter. I don't botch the shit out of his name. What's his last name? Oka, I can't even. Yeah. Peter O, I'll say, right? But like, he's one of these dudes that is vicious with it. Right. And I know that, like, I'm like, well, I'm not like, I want to go after this guy, but I know I can't go after it like that. Then I'm like, yo, Pete, hit this dude up. And Pete's that go get him guy. Pete's like the fucking pit bull. Right. But like, I say that because like, everyone makes moves in a different kind of ways. So like the way I speak and what I do on social media, it's okay if that's not, a comfortable approach for you, right? You might have a different way. But I say that for me, confidence came, and this is just real talk. Confidence came for me because I'm in now a more senior position. So I'm in a position where I can have these conversations, people, and basically tell people to fuck off, right? But I know that it's more difficult for when you're, not a senior. I know it's also more difficult when you're a woman, and when you're a Black woman, right? Because then it's like, oh, she's fucking angry Black woman, right? So I say that, like, test things out, throw those things out there. Have people, like, if you feel like you really want to move that way, you really want to, hey, I want to say these things, I want to push this on social media, like, have someone like I have a Kenny and like bounce him off, like, hey, this is what I want to actually post. Do you think this shit sounds okay? No, right? Yes? Okay, cool. Or how would you edit that? All right, cool, boom, and then go do it. Like, it's okay to have these conversations right now, right? Because again, I keep saying, because of the moment we're in. And I'd say that, like, right now, there's so many people are using our voices, and we need to have more people using their voices. And look, just because you don't make a post like that, like, engaging on someone else's post is just as powerful, right? Like, the only reason why some of the shit that I say ends up popping or ends up being in press or whatever is because, not because of me, is because hundreds or thousands of other people are engaging in the conversation too. So the other people are saying, so in theory, like, the more people, right, the fucking more power we have. When you have a ton of people come into this conversation, that's powerful. So like, using your voice could be a like on somebody's post. Using your voice could be a comment on someone's post to then uplift that post to get more reach, right? So don't, like, I'm fucking rambling here, but just get somebody you could bounce it off and move like that. I'd say. I apologize. I went left, right, up and down, and sideways.
Hey, it's all good. That's how we do it here on the Sunnyside. Here on the Sunnyside chat. So, like, you know, from my heart to yours, Brother Walter, I can't thank you enough for sharing your time, your talent, and your truth with 50 of the brightest, smartest, wittiest, funniest young up-and-comers in advertising, marketing, media, and PR, aka our gifts. Thank you so much for spending your time and just like kind of helping us kind of shape this message. We are also going to address this message in our growth prep school, because now we got a fucking prep school too. So our growth prep school will be the first 2 weeks of August. So we'll be talking more about personal branding and really getting like to the nitty gritty of stuff and really helping our gifts kind of figure that out as they walk into this crazy industry that we've been in for so very long. And also how much their voices are highly valued and needed in this industry. As we talk about, we need more people to speak up. We need them to speak up, because after a while, you know, we're going to be the old dudes and they're going to think, oh, they're just grouchy.
Facts.
Like,
look,
you know,
look, man, one of you guys need to hire me one day, because when I'm like this ageism shit is real. When I'm like 60, I'm like, please, somebody, Al, somebody, Beatrice, Jola, somebody, hire my ass. Trust me, I'm gonna need it. So thank you. And I appreciate everyone taking the time to listen to me ramble. Sometimes it can be difficult, but thank you. All right.
Well, we appreciate you. We appreciate you. We appreciate you, sir. Salute.
Facts.
All
Facts.
right, y'all.
Take care, everybody.
So let's roll into